North Korea betrayed, used by Russia as bait in Ukraine's bloodiest battle. August 9, 2025. At dawn, the quiet fields of eastern Ukraine shook with the roar of engines. But leading the charge were not Russia's elite brigades. It was North Korea. 1,200 soldiers, 32 Chanma Tu-16 tanks, 15 APCs, and 8 artillery pieces were thrown forward, the first time Pyongyang's army had set foot in Europe since the Korean War. Moscow promised them honor. Pyongyang called it brotherhood. But the truth was far darker. They were never meant to win. They were meant to die. North Korea's Vanguard was sacrificed as bait, ordered to absorb Ukraine's drones, mines, and artillery, while Russia's own units stayed safe behind the lines. The result was catastrophic. In less than 5 hours, over 750 North Korean troops were killed or wounded, 25 tanks turned to fireballs, and nearly $500 million in hardware wiped out. Russia lost almost nothing. It was not a partnership. It was a betrayal. But how exactly did Moscow use its ally as cannon fodder? And how did Ukraine turn this trap into the bloodiest humiliation North Korea has faced in 70 years? I will show you the shocking truth right now. August 9th, 2025. At exactly 6:30 a.m., the battlefield of eastern Ukraine witnessed something unprecedented. It was not Russian armor that rumbled first, but North Korean. Moscow had unleashed its expendable reinforcements. 1,200 troops, supported by 32 Chanma Tu-16 tanks, 15 armored personnel carriers, and 8 self-propelled artillery pieces. This was no token gesture. That single column represented nearly 10% of North Korea's modern armored stock and a force valued at over $450 million. It was the largest foreign deployment of North Korean forces since the Korean War ended in 1953. And yet, instead of honor, they were handed the most dangerous role, the spearhead of Russia's assault. Propaganda in Pyongyang promised glory. Loudspeakers boasted of brotherhood with Moscow and a march into history. But the cold reality was devastating. Russia had turned its ally into meat shields. Russian T-90Ms and BMP-3s stayed far behind, while outdated North Korean steel and flesh were pushed into the kill zone first. Every Chanma Tu-16 tank carried a crew of 4 men. That meant over 120 tank crewmen were thrown forward with almost no chance of survival. If even half the tanks were destroyed in the first hours, as Ukrainian analysts predicted, that would equal the loss of $200 million in hardware and 60 trained specialists before Russian armor even engaged. It was here that General Valery Zaluzhny delivered a line that echoed across the ranks. If Moscow thinks foreign pawns can break us, they are wrong. Every tank they send, whether Russian or North Korean, will burn the same. The shocking truth was undeniable. In one morning, Pyongyang had committed nearly 1/6 of its armored divisions abroad, only to be used as disposable pawns in Moscow's grand chess game. What was hailed in Pyongyang as a march to glory had, in reality, become the opening chapter of humiliation. Do you think Russia truly values North Korea as an ally? Or are they just using them as disposable pawns? Yes or no? Leave your answer in the comments below. The first wave of North Korean armor had barely advanced a kilometer when Moscow revealed its cruel strategy. Leading the assault was not a Russian T-90, but a rusting M2010 armored personnel carrier, deliberately chosen as bait. To the Ukrainians, it was obvious. Moscow was using its new allies as test subjects, throwing them forward to gauge the strength of Kiev's defenses. From a concealed tree line, Ukrainian FP5 drone operators launched strike after strike. One drone slammed into the M2010's side, another into its turret, a third into its rear. The vehicle staggered forward like a wounded beast, but refused to die. It took 18 drones, each worth barely $2,000, to finally cripple the outdated APC. The absurdity was shocking. Nearly $36,000 of drones wasted on a machine worth less than half that sum. And yet the real cost was not material. It was human. Inside, a dozen North Korean soldiers were torn apart before they ever fired a shot. But even as the APC burned, another problem surfaced. For several minutes, Ukrainian drone operators reported sudden signal interference. Screens flickered, controls lagged. A captured Russian Zytel jammer mounted near the front line had briefly disrupted their frequencies. It was a dangerous moment. With drones grounded, North Korean infantry began to push closer, exploiting the gap. But Ukrainian technicians quickly switched to backup frequency hopping systems, restoring control in less than 6 minutes. The swarm returned, diving once more on exposed enemy soldiers. What could have been a disaster turned into a reminder of Ukraine's adaptability under fire. By 7 a.m., the battlefield had become a slaughterhouse. Columns of North Korean infantry advanced in tight formations, drilled in parade ground style but disastrously unsuited for modern war. Within the first 30 minutes, over 240 North Korean troops, 20% of their entire vanguard, were wiped out. Thermal drones hunted survivors hiding in ditches and tree lines, striking them one by one. From a safe distance, Russian commanders watched silently, taking notes. They had risked nothing, while their allies paid in blood. What was advertised in Pyongyang as a march of brotherhood had instead become a grotesque blood experiment, a trial by fire designed only to expose Ukrainian positions at the cost of foreign lives. And the grim truth was undeniable. North Korea's debut in European warfare was already spiraling into catastrophe. If you want more shocking frontline reports like this, make sure to subscribe right now. Every new video brings you closer to the truth behind today's wars. Don't miss it. The smoking wreck of the M2010 still burned in the distance when Moscow ordered another wave forward. This time, Russian armor rolled cautiously behind, 2 T-90 tanks and a single BMP-3. But the real burden of the assault once again fell on Pyongyang's shoulders. North Korean commanders, desperate to prove their worth, unleashed a bizarre and reckless tactic. 12 quad bikes, each carrying 4 soldiers, tore across the open fields at full throttle. The idea was simple: speed over armor. They believed racing straight into Ukrainian positions would overwhelm the defenders before drones could lock on. It was a fatal miscalculation. From the sky, Ukrainian operators calmly watched the formation through thermal feeds. The first FPV drone dove, striking the lead quad bike. In an instant, flames erupted, bodies hurled into the air. The rest pressed on, only to be caught in the jaws of a new weapon: cluster munitions fired from concealed artillery. Dozens of bomblets scattered across the field, detonating in brutal sequence. The scene turned into chaos. Within 10 minutes, all 12 quad bikes were destroyed. Of the 46 soldiers riding them, not one survived intact. Some were killed instantly. Others writhed in agony before drones swooped in to finish the job. The open farmland became a graveyard, marked by burning craters and shattered steel. Ukrainian troops on the ground described it as surreal. "It looked like a parade drill gone wrong," one soldier later remarked. "They drove in straight lines, no cover, no dispersion, like they thought this was 1950, not 2025. The massacre did not end there. Survivors from earlier waves, scattered North Korean infantry who had fled the destruction of the APCS, attempted to escape into nearby tree lines. But thermal drones hunted them relentlessly. Each heat signature became a target. One by one, men were cut down, their positions marked with precision and struck with devastating accuracy. By the time the dust settled, more than 850 North Korean soldiers had been committed since dawn, and over 600 were already dead or wounded, a staggering 70% casualty rate among the vanguard. Russian armor still lingered safely in the rear, untouched, while their supposed allies bled out across Ukrainian soil. The message was unmistakable. North Korea's role was not to win battles, but to absorb them. Moscow was playing chess with foreign pawns, and Pyongyang's soldiers were the ones sacrificed in silence. The story doesn't end here. What happened next will shock you even more. Don't go anywhere. By mid-morning, the battlefield had become a wasteland of burning metal and broken bodies. Yet the bloodletting was only beginning. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones circling high above the front transmitted coordinates that revealed a chilling sight. The remaining North Korean contingent, what was left of its once proud battalion, was regrouping near a tree line alongside elements of a Russian convoy. The decision was made instantly. Ukraine would unleash its deadliest weapon not in small strikes, but as a storm. Within minutes, over 300 kamikaze drones were launched simultaneously from hidden positions across the sector. The sky darkened as the swarm rose, a buzzing black cloud that blotted out the sun. Soldiers on both sides froze in terror. To the North Koreans, who had never faced such technology, it looked less like war and more like the arrival of a mechanical plague. Panic erupted. 20 Chanma Tu-16 tanks tried to break out, engines roaring, but the minefields laid the night before trapped them in place. As the first tank rolled over a pressure plate, an explosion ripped through its tracks, immobilizing it. Seconds later, drones dived onto its turret, igniting the ammunition inside. The vehicle detonated in a blinding fireball, scattering flaming debris across the field. Then the slaughter accelerated. Drones swarmed over APCS, smashing into engines and fuel tanks. In just 15 minutes, 20 tanks and 8 armored vehicles were obliterated. Ammunition trucks went up in secondary explosions, sending shockwaves that could be felt a mile away. For the infantry, there was no escape. 200 North Korean soldiers huddled in shallow trenches were shredded by cluster drone payloads. Even Russian troops positioned nearby could not escape the carnage. At least 40 were confirmed dead, victims of the very alliance they had engineered. Observers described the battlefield as apocalyptic. Columns of smoke rising into the sky, fields littered with craters, drones circling like vultures over corpses. By noon, the once formidable North Korean Vanguard had ceased to exist. An entire battalion, more than 900 men and machines worth nearly $500 million, was reduced to ash in the span of a single morning. The message was no longer symbolic. It was catastrophic reality. North Korea's army had been erased in Europe before Russia had even risked its own. When the smoke finally cleared, the scale of devastation was undeniable. In a single morning, North Korea had suffered losses greater than any foreign expeditionary force in modern memory. Nearly 1,000 troops had been deployed into Ukraine, and by midday, over 750 were confirmed killed or wounded. That meant more than 3 out of every 4 soldiers never returned from the front. The armored toll was catastrophic. Out of 32 Chanma Tu-16 tanks sent, 25 lay in ruins, their hulks scattered across the blackened landscape. 15 APCS had been committed. Only 3 limped away damaged but barely functional. Every artillery piece that crossed the border, 8 in total, was destroyed within hours. In financial terms, this represented $500 million in lost equipment, erased by drones and mines costing a fraction of that amount. For North Korea, the humiliation ran deeper than numbers. Analysts noted that the morning's destruction amounted to nearly 1/6 of Pyongyang's entire armored fleet. To replace what had been lost would take years of production, resources the isolated regime could scarcely afford. The casualty rate was the highest Pyongyang had experienced in a single battle since the darkest days of the Korean War in 1950. Meanwhile, Russia had achieved its goal without risking its own formations. Moscow's elite T-90Ms never left their staging areas. Not one Russian brigade absorbed the opening fire. Instead, their ally was bled dry to expose Ukrainian defenses, absorbing every drone, every shell, every mine. It was a masterclass in cynical exploitation, and Pyongyang played its role to perfection. Ukrainian officers summarized it bluntly. The so-called Brotherhood in Arms was nothing more than a human shield strategy. For Kiev's defenders, the morning confirmed the effectiveness of their 3-layered system: drones to disrupt, artillery to devastate, and Bradley vehicles and minefields to finish what remained. With this structure, even a numerically superior force could be broken before it ever reached striking distance. The verdict was brutal. North Korea's first combat deployment in Europe had ended not in triumph, but in annihilation. Moscow gained intelligence, Ukraine gained confidence, and Pyongyang gained only a place in history as the pawn that bled for someone else's war. As one Ukrainian analyst put it, Russia keeps its kings and queens safe. North Korea sacrifices pawns until the board is empty. As the fires smoldered over the Ukrainian fields, one truth became undeniable. North Korea's first battle in Europe was not a show of strength, but a catastrophe written in blood. Nearly 1,000 troops committed, more than 750 casualties, and $500 million of equipment destroyed, all in less than a single day. Russia lost almost nothing. Not a single elite brigade was risked. Not a single modern T-90M was sent into the front line. Instead, Moscow watched from the safety of the rear while its ally was chewed apart. The so-called brotherhood between Putin and Kim was nothing more than a brutal calculation. Let Pyongyang absorb the losses, while Russia holds its true power in reserve. For Ukraine, the battle told another story, that layered defense, smart technology, and relentless coordination can shatter even the heaviest columns. Drones that cost less than a family car wiped out tanks worth millions. Mines laid overnight crippled convoys worth hundreds of millions. Artillery and Bradleys finished what the drones had started. In this new era of warfare, precision and creativity outweigh brute numbers. And for North Korea, the lesson was devastating. In the span of hours, they suffered their worst battlefield humiliation since 1950. Their soldiers were not remembered as liberators or heroes, but as disposable pawns sacrificed in someone else's war. The question remains, will Pyongyang understand the price it just paid, or will it keep playing Moscow's game until nothing is left? If you found this analysis powerful, don't forget to like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more deep dive stories on modern warfare. Your support keeps us going, and every click helps us uncover the truth behind the battles shaping our world.